everybody, and welcome to episode number 7, the finale of the Let's Learn a Change of Seasons guitar series. I can't believe we've come this far already. For anybody just joining us, I'm going to do a quick recap of the challenges that we have overcome throughout. So far we have learned to control the temperature of the sun with a single knob. We've regained our innocence after being found guilty in a kangaroo court. We have successfully seized the day, as they say. We've survived a dark winter of severe illness and death. We've managed to keep our sanity and composure throughout an onslaught of fake news and propaganda from an alternate reality. We've also learned that John Petrucci plays his best solos in the summertime. And of course, how can we forget covering every single note, every single time change, every single chord progression in a full detailed musical analysis of A Change of Seasons thus far. But come, as we have one more challenge that awaits us. And that challenge is to use all of the wisdom that we have gained throughout this series to chase the sun right over the horizon and hold it in the palm of our hand. So let us learn Part 7 of A Change of Seasons, The Crimson Sunset. The Crimson Sunset can be split up into 5 different sections. The first is a very triumphant guitar melody that segues out of Part 6. Now this is in compound meter or 12/8, so a triplet version of 4/4, and utilizes a lot of influences from Brian May of Queen. This influence is made obvious from the use of scalar lines connected by very strong chord tones. And let's not forget a key change at the very end. The second section follows the same compound 12/8 rhythm, but this time with a 7-string riff to carry us through a verse. Nice. And the chords remain largely the same as well. The third section can be seen as a unique transition, using some very disjointed chord shifts to get us into the last and final unique chord progression. Now this fourth progression is the final unique idea in the entirety of the A Change of Seasons suite. That loops around a whole bunch of times until we finally get to the end. However, although it's unique, it does harken back to the verse from Part 2, Innocence. Go back and listen to it if you don't know what I'm talking about. Then that finally all gives way to the final riff of the song, which is also the first riff of the song. A true bookend approach. Now let's get into that first guitar melody line influenced by Brian May of Queen. Let's check it out. Before getting into the guitar part, we have to go over the chord progression being laid out with the bass line. Each chord takes up 4 beats in a triplet rhythm, and we're starting off on a C sharp minor, our key center, so this is our 1 chord. Okay, and then we go to an F sharp minor chord, which is the 4 chord, down to an E, that's a whole step down, which is basically our flat 3 chord or the relative major to C sharp minor. Okay, so those are directly related to each other. Then we go to a B, which is the flat 7th chord, which then goes right back into our 1 chord. Okay, so the flat 7 leads up to 1. C sharp minor, then down to F sharp minor again, so 1 to 4. And then we go up right to a B, so skipping to the flat 7, and then coming down to a minor 5, which is a G sharp minor. Now all of those chords occur within the key of C sharp minor naturally. Now here's a little thing about the G sharp minor and the B. A G sharp minor chord is made up of the notes G sharp, B, and D sharp. Okay? B is made up of the notes B, D sharp, and F sharp. Now did you notice something about that? That's right, they are extensions of one another. So if you put a B major chord on top of a G sharp, you get yourself a G sharp minor 7th chord, okay? And you can just keep doing that as high as you want within any given key. It's kind of cool that you can stack chords on top of each other. The final 4 measures return back to C sharp minor, going C sharp minor as the 1, but this time going to E major, which which is basically going right to the relative major out of the gate, or the flat 3 chord. And then we gotta hit a G to a D chord. That's a little strange. The G and D chord thrown in at the end there can be a bit of a curveball, but can be easily explained. E major is the relative major to C sharp minor. So that's the final chord before we hit this shift, okay? So that's going to be our springboard, the relative major of the C sharp minor, which is E. Now, what we're doing is we're going to 2 chords that are within the parallel minor key of E, which would be E minor. Okay, now both G and D occur naturally within the E minor scale, but we don't have an E minor. So I think it's safe to assume that we are actually going to the key of G. Alright, so in short, we are going to the relative major of C sharp minor, which is E major, to the parallel minor of E major, which is E minor, to the relative major of E minor, which is G. And that G and D would just simply be the 1 and the 5 chord, the tonic and the dominant chord. Now with all that said, let's get into the first third of the guitar melody line. Now this guitar melody isn't technically stunning, but it does play along perfectly with the chord's harmonic structure. Over at the 6th fret of the D string, we have a G sharp going up to this, 6, 8, 9. That's the 1, 2, and flat third of the C sharp minor chord, okay? So 5, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then the next resolution goes like this. That 7th fret is actually the minor third of the F sharp minor chord, that's right. And then we move up 3, 4, 5. With a series of another resolution, which is basically the G sharp on top of the E chord. And you want to do that little hammer-on pull right at the 6th and 7th fret of the D string, coming into the 9th fret of the A, which is the perfect 5th of the B chord. And then going 3, 4, 5 on the B. So if you notice, a lot of this is 3s, 4s, and 5s, except for the first chord basically, alright? So 5, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 5, 3, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, and then with a little resolution back to C sharp very quickly before returning back up to the top. Section 2 of 3 ascends a little bit higher and follows a lot of the harmonic functions we've just become familiar with. We begin with the first phrase of the previous section, and then immediately move higher. So let's take a look at what we have there. We're starting off at the 6th fret of the D string once again. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 flat 3 on the same exact frets that we had before. And then we ascend up to the perfect 5th of the C sharp minor chord. So we're going 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, changing positions of course, going to 12, and resolving into that A again. Now the A is the same note we had down the octave. Remember this? Well, we're doing this. We're just going up one more note to the flat 7 of the C sharp, or the 12th fret, into the flat third of the F sharp minor. See how that works? So then we have this cool bendy thing going on here. We're basically going like this. You're picking the first 2 notes and then bending right after that. Watch this. And you want to give it a nice erratic bend, but very emotional, almost like a quivering squirrel running from a lion. Check this out. And then we continue on going like this. So that's 9, 9, 11. Okay, be careful about 9/11 on YouTube. You don't want to talk too much about that event on this platform, otherwise you get banned. Here we go. When you hit that 11th fret, that is the perfect 5th of the B chord, exactly what we did before, okay? So that's perfect 5th going 3, 4, 5. I'm starting to notice a pattern here. And then finally we resolve this way, okay, down to the 9th fret of the D string. Now that is the minor third of the G sharp minor. Okay, so the flatted third again, or I should just say a third again, going like this. That's going up 3rd, 4th, and 5th. You notice that pattern? And then the very final part, is just playing the root and the 5th of G sharp, but at the 11th fret of the A and the 8th fret of the G, going back and forth until we reach the 9th fret of the G string. Great compositional chops from John Petrucci. We're basically using the 3rd, 4th, and 5th on every single chord except for the C sharp minor. So watch this, ready? So 1, 2, 3, flat 3rd to 5th, 3rd to 5th, 5th, 3, 4, 5, then back. 1, 2, 3, flat 3rd, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we're continuing to do the same thing. 5, 3, 4, 5, 3, 3, 4, 5. Dum da, until we return back to C sharp minor, but on the flatted 3rd. The final 3rd of this PP Poo Poo Pie uses the same scale shape in 2 different keys, okay? So we're basically starting with an E major scale shape at the 9th fret of the G string, moving up like this. Lots of vibrato on the last note. So that's 9th fret, 11th, 9th, 10th, 12th. And then once you get to there, you have to do the 9th alternating between the 12th on the B. So watch this. 9, 12, then 11, 12, resolving right into that top note, which by the way is the root note of E. Alright, so we're starting on the flat 3rd of C sharp minor and resolving to the root of E. Now, this scale shape is E major, so it's interchangeable between the C sharp minor and the E. Doesn't matter what order we do it in, but in this case we're doing C sharp followed by E. So one more time. Alright, right in position. The next pattern takes the same shape up a minor 3rd, or better yet, 1, 2, 3 frets. Alright, so this is outlining the G and the D chords, and basically we're going into the 12th fret like this. Same pattern, except we're going to bend that last note a whole step to match up with the D chord underneath. So once again, 12, 12, 14, 12, 13, 15. Once we get to that 15th fret, we're going to go 12, alternate, alternate, and then big bend at the end, which you're going to have static at first and then gradually add the vibrato at the end. And that final bend is the perfect 5th of the D chord. So all these notes line up with the chords perfectly. We start with the flatted 3rd on the C sharp minor to the root of E major. And then we immediately change keys, root of the G, up the scale, and then to the 5th of a D chord. So it's all perfectly in line with our chord progression. Very nice. Let's play that entire thing slow, all 3 parts, just like this. Now remember, lots of vibrato all throughout. You'll see what I mean. Check it out. Ready? You almost want to exaggerate it. Much wiser now. Now the fun doesn't end there. We have some dizzying Derek Sherinian psychosis to undergo. He is adding more chords within the progression than are necessary to fulfill his role. Check this out. Now notice how Derek Sherinian is playing twice the amount of chords as John Mayung is in the bass line. That's pretty crazy. Now Derek is overcompensating here, but it's okay. It sounds pretty good. He's mostly playing perfect 5th intervals that move up through the chord to create some jazzy color tones, and also to solidify him as the coolest guy on the planet, that bastard. Does sound pretty good though. The next and final thing to mention for this melodic guitar section is the drum groove that Mike Portnoy plays underneath. He's accenting beats 2 and 5 of every 6 counts with the China cymbal. Now that creates a very unsettling rhythmic feeling. Check it out. This unsettling feeling comes from the complete avoidance of the downbeat using the cymbals. Now typically drummers understand their role, of giving us a clear indication of where the beat starts and ends. But not this guy over here. This Mike Portnoy guy, he's a little mischievous. Mike Portnoy down the street, he hangs out in his basement. Look out for that Mike Portnoy. He's going to put lizards and alligators in your toilet bowl when you're not looking, so be careful. And the only thing that can give us any comfort within this moment is the fact that this motif is repeated earlier in the song, or I should say it's repeated now, and it happened earlier in the song. More specifically, it happened during part 4, The Darkest of Winters. Check this out. It's the same idea, but with a totally different context and a totally different symbol. Anyway, let's get beyond this introduction for Christ's sake. Let's get into this next big beefy 7-string riff. Still in 12/8, by the way. It's worth noting that the keyboards during this section follow the same chord progression, basically, as the previous section, but with a totally different riff and context underneath, creating a lot more tension. And the source of all that tension comes from this big beefy 7-string riff using the low B string. I love using the low B string. Goes like this: 2nd fret of the low B. That's one measure right there. Now basically we're going with this rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 with the accent on the 9th beat, and then the 11th and 12th with that little 2 open down at the bottom. So we're going hitting the octave up top. Add a little bit of vibrato on that high note for some added attitude. Pretty basic. It's kind of like a C sharp minor 7 but in a really low octave. We continue in with this little bluesy pentatonic thing like this. Okay, let's play that one more time. So you want to do that pull off on the E string like this. So we're basically accenting the F sharp and the E there. That's just going 4 to flat 3. It's all blues and pentatonic stuff. The next one does a similar rhythm, but accents the flatted 3rd instead of the octave or the pentatonic. So check this out. Oh yeah, give a lot of nice attitude on that vibrato on the 5th fret there. Bum, 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 bum. Alright, you want to make sure you have your sunglasses on the entire time when you're playing that. Actually, you should have your sunglasses on the entire time you're playing this riff, just like the live guitar solo in the music video. The riff continues into a B. Alright, so we're basically outlining the B chord from the progression like this. We just have a little bit of a pentatonic thing happening on top of a B. So, 5, 7, a hammer on, going to the 5th here, and then kind of sliding out back into the original C sharp position, okay? So that's just basically a B minor 7. Pretty cool. We come back around to repeat those first 2 measures. Octave. Okay, with the pentatonic after that. Then the next measure is just a measure of B. You get to just coast on that. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Bop, bop. Okay? The next part would be the 4th fret on the low E string, which outlines that G sharp minor chord that we saw before. So we're going to be on the 4th of the E and the low B like this. And that's 1, 5, 1 of the chord. And then this descending minor line just outlining notes in the C sharp minor scale like this. So one more time. Before we head into a nice big beefy C sharp power chord down at the bottom. And of course the next part is just a series of power chords, but very low ones and some unique voicings to boot. So we start off with this duplet rhythm on a C sharp power chord, way down 2nd fret and 4th of the B and the E, like this. 3-note power chord, you're just going to outline it just like that. That's your 1 chord, ready? And then we're going to go like this to an E power chord. This is very similar to the power chord that we saw in Another World, right? That's how that started. But we're just going to play it like that. 1, 2, so C sharp. 1, 2. Then we hit a G chord like this with the open notes. So you're basically hitting the 3rd fret of the low E, open D, open G, and then the B string 3rd fret, muting the A string. So, and then right after that, you're going to put your pointer down on the 2nd fret of the G, which is an A. That creates an A. Well, actually creates a G add 9. An A, of course an A creates an A, but this is creating a G add 9 with the same rhythm as the previous chord. And then we go down to this. This is the biggest D power chord I've ever seen in my entire life. Biggest Dius. Anybody that's watched little Mel Brooks is going to know about that one, right? So we got that big beefy D down at the bottom. Basically what you're doing the same thing you did with the G chord. You're going to keep your pointer held over from the 2nd fret of the G, and you're going to have open A, open D, and then the usual D. This is like Sweet Home Alabama right on the top. Check that out. Right? Except not that shitty. Right? Look. Sweet Home Alabama, add the open A string, and then add the low D down at the bottom, which you couldn't do with a 6-string guitar. You could only do it with a 7-string guitar. That's why you're here watching this video. You get new information every single time. Beyond that, we have a unique transition that gives us some very interesting chord movements, almost disjointed sounding. And it only happens once, of course, in Dream Theater fashion. And it sounds like this. Just like the last 2 sections, we're still in the key of C sharp minor. And it starts with this lick. We slide from the 6th fret to the 7th fret of the D string, and we do this line. Now the enunciation of that section, like this, you want to make sure all those notes are free at the very beginning, right? And also going downward, but the final 3 are going to be like this. Okay, so 3 mutes to come down to C sharp at the very end. So, and you want to stretch your fingers out. Pointer's going to be lodged on the 7th fret. You're going to go up. Pedal tone. That's that Lydian sound, that A Lydian sound with the sharp 4th. That tritone in there, and then that's the exact articulation you want to use. Now basically all we're doing is highlighting an A major 7th chord, right? Because we have the major 7th coming into the root with the 6th, 5th, sharp 4th, that's Lydian, and then 9, major 7, dropping down all the way to C sharp, which is our root note. Now remember before when I said we had some peculiar movements between the chords? Here's going to be the first one we see. Now we're going to be on a C sharp power chord like this, into a Lydian mode, right, with a little palm muting at the bottom there, but freeing it up at the end. Now that's the same idea as we did up here, except we're down here, right, A major. And then we come down to a G, with that sequence of notes on top of it. Now the G is going to be the pedal tone, 3rd fret of the E, up to a power chord. All notes are separate, however. Then we're hopping all the way up to the 7th fret of the D string. That's a 9th. Right? So it sounds very cool. Also a characteristic sound of Dream Theater, as we've gotten used to. And then an octave. And then finally, the 4th fret, which is the major 7th. So you can say this is a major 9. So we're going from C sharp to A to G. That's a tritone away from where we were. Now, ordinarily the tritone means Lydian, but this time it absolutely doesn't. We're just completely shifting keys in the total furthest way that we can, right? One more time. Now we're able to connect those two together with the rhythm that's used and making sure we really commit to these chord changes, alright? The next motion manages to be more drastic while ironically moving by a smaller increment. We are once again surrounded by a brilliant C sharp power chord, followed by the A Lydian, down a half step to C. Alright, now that's a half step away from the original note, so this could be something of a harmonic minor. We'll talk about it. And then we go to these two intervals. Alright, now that's where things get a little bit weird, right? We have a major 6th, going right to a minor 6, and as we know, or we don't know, but we will know, we're going to hit a B after that, so another half-step modulation. But let's take a look at what's going on there. The obvious possibility to rule out is that this is a C power chord, or a C chord in general. It's not, because we're not playing the power chord, we're not playing a perfect 5th, we're playing a 6th followed by a 6th. So immediately what this screams out to me is a first inversion chord. Alright? This usually indicates that type of function. Now, typically when we think of a first inversion chord, we think of a drop-down progression like this. Right? Almost like a Green Day type of thing. To drop down to the 6th chord, basically. But that's not entirely what we're doing here. And this also isn't a Green Day song, so this is anything but a typical situation. Luckily for us, the explanation is not too difficult. This is basically a first inversion G sharp chord, which will actually make the C that I was talking about before into a B sharp. That's right. That's not a C anymore. That's a B sharp, and I know you'll love it when I call a C a B sharp. It just makes you all warm and tingly on the inside, doesn't it? So this G sharp chord is actually the 5 chord in first inversion. Okay? And a very common motion on top of a 5 chord would be a flatted 9th to the root. And that would usually sound like this with G sharp on the bottom. Alright, so a very, 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 very dramatic way of doing it. Let me play it in a different context. Very cool. That's the A on top, which is the flatted 9th going to the root, G sharp. Now, if we put that on top of a B sharp, like we were saying, and play these intervals, it's B sharp and A, flatted 9th, just resolving to the root note. How easy is that? So let me play all that slowly for you. Here we go. Now all that stuff I just explained before isn't even the weirdest part about this. The weirdest part is the transition from that G sharp chord in first inversion to a B. The whole next section is in B minor with 4 chords rolling through. Now, here's why it's so strange. When you go from a G sharp, that minor 3rd transition is a very odd way to completely change keys, okay? It's an awkward distance away, a step and a half, because you're going G sharp major to B minor. It sounds really awkward when you do it like that. However, when we put that in first inversion, the G sharp chord, that allows us to move a half step down into our new key center, which makes it sound much more smooth and honestly much more sophisticated. So, ready? Check it out. And that's the whole thing right there. Now let's get into this B minor progression, which is the final unique section of the song. I'm going to split this up into a few different sections as different elements are added and subtracted as we move along. Let's start with the electric guitar part. It just moves along with the chord progression, 3/4, 3 beats apiece, through power chords. So it couldn't get any easier than that. Let's check that out real quick. We got a B, 2, 3, A, F sharp, G. Then the second time we have B, A over C sharp. That's that first inversion triad again. Not a triad, but first inversion power chord, we'll say. Then moving to a D and an E. Okay, so just moving right along, 2, 4, 5, 7, pretty easy. The electric guitar continues to do that through the entirety of this whole section. The acoustic guitar, however, has some changes as the part progresses. And the first time through, the acoustic guitar doubles the piano octaves going on at the top, using the open E and B strings, but we're still going to play the full power chord on the bottom. So we're basically doubling the electric guitar while also playing extra notes on top. So check this out. We're on the 2nd fret of the A for B, and we're also going to add this, the B and the E strings on the top, or better yet, E and B. Alright, so that creates a B add 11th chord. Still a 1 chord though, okay? Then we come down to an A. We basically just drop the root We go to A, open A, the pointer's on the second fret here, and then we go bam, that's what I'm talking about. A, add 9. Alright, so we have a stacked fifth, and still we have the E and the B on the top. Now that's basically happening twice. We have E and B here, and we have E and B here, with just an A on the bottom. That creates an A add 9. Very nice sound, flat 7th chord as well. We then hop down to the F sharp, which is a bar chord, but it's more like Alice in Chains' Rooster. Just like that. We've also heard that on Images and Words plenty of times, but we're going to hold it like this. Okay? But instead of doing the open E and B strings, we're going to play the B and do that resolution right there. That's kind of like a sus4, but it's better than that. It's an add 4 because we're including the 3rd and the 4th in the chord. So that sounds like this. Very cool. Now the second one, the next chord, well it's actually the 4th chord, is a G, which we shift up, and we go right back to playing the E and B string on top. That creates a G6. Kind of cool, right? We continue on with that, going back to B. So you have a B at 11 there, that's the 1 chord, and then we play this same inverted chord, but we keep the E and B going the entire time. D power chord and E power chord. Now I know I blasted through that pretty quick, but on the first inversion, it's still an A add 9, except now we have the C sharp in there. The D is a 6-9. Oh my God. Anybody who's been watching these Dream Theater videos, they understand that the 69, the 6-9, the most horrendous position on the planet for a Dream Theater guy to be in, is making its appearance once again. The dirty-minded mother truckers of this band is once again subjecting me to something awful. Unbelievable. It's borderline pornographic. Anyway, let's get on to the last chord. It's just an E5, 7th fret, like this. And that's just E, B, E, B, E. So that's a big E power chord. Doesn't get any cooler than that. Well, actually, it does get a lot cooler than that, but we'll get there at some point. So those are the main shapes that will remain the same as we move across this, but we have some different styles that we're going to be playing in, mostly with strumming and more percussive elements as well with the acoustic guitar. So let's get on to the next 2 cycles of this section. So here we see a shift in approach. Instead of doubling the piano like this, like we did before, we're opting to stab these chords with a staccato rhythm, okay? And that goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now you want to make sure you're strumming all of the notes in the chords, all right, to make it nice and full. And you also want to make sure that your articulation is long, short, short. Or better yet, long, stab, stab, 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 boom, all the way up. If you don't finish this, John Myung is going to come into your house and make sandwiches in your sink without your permission. You don't want him to do that because he makes a big old mess in there. His sandwiches, he likes his sandwiches greasy and full of just full of sauce. Buffalo sauce all over the floor. You gotta mop for weeks. You'll never get the smell out. This time with the acoustic, we do a mishmash of both ideas. We start by going back to doubling the piano notes. It's nice, I like playing this part. It's really a lot of fun. I don't know why he didn't just do it the same all the way, but hey, I'm not John Petrucci. Then we bring back the full chord idea, but instead of stabbing the notes, we're going to be a lot more free with them, alright? A lot more free flowing like this. And a little 16th at the end. 2, 3, and a 1, 2, 3, and a 1, 2, 3, and a 1, 2, 3. We go all the way through, and that only happens one time. So like I said, we're doing a mishmash between the 2 parts. Now on the 6th and final time through the progression, We don't do any of the arpeggiating or strumming. We're basically just hitting the chord once to allow for Mike Portnoy's impeccable drum fills. Let's check that out. And after that last E chord, we hit into the final two chords that are held out just like this. You ready? On the acoustic, it looks like this. Alright, on the electric, it's just a regular old G chord, an open G power chord like that, but on the acoustic, we're hitting that. That's the G6 chord that we were playing before. And then once more drum fills happen, after that double snare hit, we're going to hit a nice heavy B sus2 using all 6 strings, just like that. Bar chord. Alright, 2, 2, 4, 4, 2, 2. A big bam, boobity boo. Now throughout this entire section, the guitar plays the same voicings throughout, including with that inversion. Now what if I told you that the bass, John Myung, undoes that inversion by playing a different note on the bottom? As we know, the bass player dictates the functions almost 100% of the time. And here, he's undoing John Petrucci's heroic efforts of putting a first inversion chord in there by playing an A on the bottom. Alright? And also some other, I was going to say unsavory, but it's not unsavory. It's very savory. Some savory notes coming in. Let's check that out. So basically, the bass guitar is keeping the guitar in root position when it moves up to this. Ready? Right there. The bass is going down, and the guitar is going up. Now let's put a microscope under that. So I'm going to play the bass line underneath the chords. Check this out. Ready? So, bass follows along at the beginning, right? Now here, the bass goes down and the guitar goes up, so I'm going to play this. That's more of the sound that it's giving across. Now, in addition to that, since John Myung is playing the same notes as the first time around, this D is no longer a D. It's actually a D over F sharp going to an E minor over G. Alright, so that's the color that it gives. Ready? Watch that again. Pretty cool. It makes it sound completely different than the previous iteration. Let's get on to the next 2 cycles. The bass is staying on B for the first 2 chords. Now that's kind of cool. It's creating a little bit of tension between the parts. Let it play through again and listen. Ready? B, B, and then it changes. Alright? So that's kind of interesting. And then of course it goes down instead of going up with the inversion. Keeping that B on the bottom of both of those chords actually gives it a very, 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 very tense feeling. Listen. Hear that? Doesn't sound like it's changing. Here's B going to A without that. It's almost like you're set free. But this is keeping you tense. It's keeping you in prison. Watch. Hear that? And then of course we go to play the regular ones. And then of course, I love those inversions. John Myung really does make this section a lot better than it was. It's unfortunate you can't really hear it in the mix. But anyway, next couple times, let's see what John Myung does. Now this is where things get interesting. John Myung is doing the same thing as he did the first time around, but listen here. He's moving up with the guitar. Oh my god, it's like we're in a band or something. So like I said, John Myung is mishmashing it just like the guitar in the background is, and we're doing this. John Myung moves down, inverts, but then the second time, he moves up. So it's all in perfect harmony with the guitar. But that doesn't last very long. Let's listen to what happens after that. Listen to that first note going up, continuing to go up, even higher, even higher. Oh, and then we're back down for the last part. And he just follows the chords naturally after that. So on that first chord, John Myung is making a point to say this is going to be a first inversion minor triad because it's a B minor on top of a D, and that sounds like this. Alright, now when the A comes into play, the A goes down, John Myung's going up to E. That is a second inversion A major. Okay, so we're getting kind of good here, right? Now the F sharp is in root position because he keeps ascending from E to F sharp is the root. Alright? And then he keeps on going. On the G chord, he's moving up and then eventually arrives back at B in the higher octave. But he continues doing up the scale. He's going C sharp, which is just coming up. And then eventually ends on E. But check this out. Ready? All in all. Pretty cool, if I may say so myself. And to hit with that high E, that peak, really just kind of encapsulates the whole thing, alright? That is the capstone on this whole section, which allows us to breathe because everything just gets held out from that point forward. And there's really not much to say about what John Myung does beyond that, except when we hit that, the D chord, right? It stops. That's a first inversion D chord, which then has a nice half-step resolution to G, right? So, which just makes it a little bit easier to handle that chord. Alright, now that we got through all that bass inversion craziness, we have one more part to go over. So enjoy. It's very obvious what part is going to come in next, but we got to go over it. Every single note, every single time change, every single section. The way that Derek Sherinian wants it. Now, unless you're a total psychopath and listen to songs from the ending first before you go to the beginning, this is the first riff of the song and it should be very familiar, okay? Now, I went over this in detail in the very first episode, so if you haven't watched that video, you should definitely go back and watch that. But here's what we're dealing with. I'll give a real quick recap. Starting on the open B, and we're going O225, that shape right there, which is on the A and the D string, okay? So we're hopping up an octave. We're basically playing a second inversion E minor triad, okay? And then we're hopping to this, to the 4th fret instead, all right? This is the motif that we hear with the distorted guitar as well. And this sets the tone for the entire piece and also leaves us at peace at the ending. Isn't that so beautiful? It's very poetic. But this kind of goes into a B power chord, but I'm going to say it's kind of an E minor 9th type of thing because we're coming from this tense interval, which is an E minor, into that. So that could be a 4 chord or it could be the 1 chord. Who knows? 4 to 1, 4 to 4, who cares? Ready? Here we go. Next one. Now that's like an E minor 7 because you're going, that's an E up top. Or it could be a B minor 11, whichever one you want. Like I said, I went over this in the first video, so you better go back to that. And then we do the same 2 notes, but we slide it up, come down to a power chord on the 5th fret of the E, which is an A add 4, it's the flat 7th chord, to G5, and that's basically just the flat 6 chord. Then we do this, that's an E minor 7th, which is a 4 chord down to a D. Now usually we see that on the G, on a 6 string, but this is the 7 string version of that chord. Right back into the B minor, so that's pretty cool. We come back around and basically do the same thing. So beautiful. Slide, A, G, E, this time no open D string, and we're going to end on this chord. You ready? Here's the payoff. Wow, a beautiful stacked fifths, C add 9 chord. We're ending on the flatted 2 of our progression. Alright, and not going to the 1. We're just ending right there. Boom. That is the most deceptive of deceptive cadences, and guess what? It sounds beautiful and brilliant. And it's basically one of the greatest moves I can think of. A C add 9 to encapsulate the ending of this beautiful suite. Alright everybody, I'm a little sad that we're finished with this, but alas, here we are. We have come to the end of the Let's Learn a Change of Seasons guitar series. All 7 parts are now uploaded for your viewing pleasure and for your learning pleasure. Remember, we got to keep those cortexes in order. You don't keep that cortex smooth, not smooth. You don't want to be smooth brain. That's not good. That comes from drinking too much alcohol. You don't want to do that. You want to have those ridges. You want to have the edge on your brain, right? You want to have it going beep, 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 right? That's exactly what we need you to do. And that's exactly what these videos are going to help you do, all right? So, if you'd like to further support the channel, go to www.subscribestar.com/RomanOva Music. You can pledge any amount per month that you want, okay? And that could be $1, $5, $20 will get you access to the RomanOva Guitar Gym. That's basically a video series that's exclusive for people paying that much money per month. You deserve it, okay? You can also leave a tip on my PayPal tip jar. You know, if you just want to say, hey, Mike, thanks a lot, boom, tip in the cup, tippy canoe, right? Inflation is making tips a lot less valuable, so make sure you leave me a good one, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, thank you so much, and if there's any question about what the next album is going to be, well, I'll be sure to announce that in due time. I think a lot of you already have a slight inkling of what the next Dream Theater album is going to be. As you know, I obsessively move in a specific order, and you're going to see. You're going to get it. All right, everybody. Peace out, and I will see you on the next one.